And what is going on, everybody? Sports Scuba Nathan Schivins, WPPJ 670 AM, Point Park's radio station. Hope everybody had a great week last week, remote learning and everything, and the draft was really cool. The draft and everything coming to Pittsburgh. A lot of people downtown and on the North Shore and everything. I had a blast at the draft a couple days, and yeah, I got a lot to get into here today on the Sports Scoop. Got to talk about the draft. Going to talk about some picks that stood out to me. Obviously going to get into the Steelers and their kind of confusing draft. We're going to get into the first round pick the Steelers made, the offensive lineman out of Arizona State. And we're going to talk about Drew Aller. We're going to talk about all these picks that the Steelers made. Going to talk about the Pens here. They face a pivotal Game 5 tonight. If they lose, obviously they are eliminated from the playoffs after a really, really lackluster first 3 games by the Pittsburgh Penguins. So going to talk about the Pens as well. Might talk Buccos a little bit too. Got to talk NBA playoffs because we're seeing some surprising results. Lakers, they lost to Houston last night, but up 3-1 on the Rockets. Minnesota up 3-1 on Denver. I said this. I said it before the series. The Nuggets should be worried about the Timberwolves, and now they're going to have to win 3 straight games. And they're going to do it against a Minnesota team that doesn't have Ant Edwards, doesn't have Dante DiVincenzo, but they couldn't beat them in Game 3, or in Game 4, excuse me, when both of those players were out for the vast majority of the game. So that'll be very interesting. Minnesota and Denver going forward. Some of them, Boston's cruising. They lost the game, but they're cruising. OKC is cruising. How about Orlando? How about the Orlando Magic? They're up on the Detroit Pistons 2-1. I think they play tonight as well. Yes, there's a lot to get into. I'm going to get into all of it today. Thank you, everyone, for listening in. Really appreciate it. Thank you to WPPJ, as always, for the opportunity to blab about sports for an hour, and Pittsburgh sports in particular, but we're going to get into a lot of NBA today as well. But I'm going to start with your Pittsburgh Steelers, or some of your Pittsburgh Steelers. They had an interesting draft, to say the least. Draft being in Pittsburgh, there were some good moments for the Steelers, like drafting Eli Heidenreich, the running back out of Navy, who is from here, went to Mount Lebanon, and was a Steeler fan growing up, and goes to Navy and gets drafted by the Steelers. That was a really good moment. But there were some other head-scratching moments, right? And people are going to talk about what the Steelers did, first round. Instead of taking Max Ihanachor, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, taking Max Ihanachor out of Arizona State and being on the phone. Really, it was really the optics of the situation. You're hosting the draft. You're in position to maybe draft Mekhi Lemon, the wide receiver, which, the fans love the wide receivers, they love the quarterbacks, you love the offensive players, offensive quote-unquote skill players. So then, not only do you not take Mekhi Lemon, the Eagles trade up and take Mekhi Lemon, you take Max Ihanachor out of Arizona State, who nobody in that draft, at the draft knows who that is, right? These fans or anything. And he was not on the radar of most fans. And he played at Arizona State, and he only started playing professional football, or not professional, but football in 2021. And people are upset. People are upset that you called Mekhi Lemon on the phone saying we're going to draft you when you weren't on the clock yet. You never see that for many teams. And for the Steelers to do that, it's bad optics. It really is. But I do think the fans are overhating the pick, and I think kind of similarly to, although very different circumstances, Mike McCarthy being hired. The fans at first are just outraged and everything. Mike McCarthy's, people have this opinion or this belief about Mike McCarthy that he's some scrub head coach, that he gets hired places and he loses, when he's a proven head coach winner. And I think a lot of fans have come around to that. Now you don't hear the criticism of Mike McCarthy being the head coach anymore, or at least not nearly as much. And I think that's what's starting to happen with this Max Ihanachor pick, because fans are first like, who is this guy? We didn't get Lemon. We didn't get a receiver. O-line, we're always drafting O-line and everything, but O-line is a need. O-line is still a need for the Steelers. The left side of the offensive line is completely unproven and needs massive work. And you draft Ihanachor, the thinking is he'll probably be right tackle, and maybe you move Fatanu to left tackle, and see where that goes. Ihanachor, look, I mean, he's a raw prospect, right? And there's a lot to work on with him. But he didn't give up a single sack at Arizona State this past season. And he played against, and Arizona State actually beat Texas Tech this season. He played against David Bailey Jr. He played against Jacob Rodriguez in that linebacking core and that front seven, and didn't give up a sack and held his own. And at the Combine, he was spectacular. I love his feet. I love how he moves from what I've seen so far. And he's a big, powerful lineman. I think it's a good pick, honestly. I think there's a lot of upside there still, because he still has a lot to learn in terms of O-line play. So I like the pick. People are saying, oh, yeah, it's a very average pick or whatever. You could have got him later. Like, a team would have drafted him later. Okay, but out of all the linemen remaining, he had the highest upside, and he has the most room to grow as well. And so I like the pick. I think the Steelers made the right move pivoting. I don't think they made the right move in calling up Mekhi Lemon and saying, hey, we're going to draft you, when there's a team on the clock ahead of you still. Right? You never see that. In the NFL, actually, they said they were going to investigate it. I mean, nothing's going to happen, but it's just funny now. Like, you suffer like kind of that PR, not a PR nightmare, but like a PR crisis issue with how your GM and everything handled the situation, and now the NFL is going to be investigating the situation. Like, that's not a good look at all for the Steelers. And that Eli Heidenreich pick really helped them out in that regard of putting that first day of the draft to the side. But I still think it was a good pick. Certainly, I think the second-round pick, Jeremy Bernard out of Alabama, was a good pick. I think he's a perfect guy to pair with a DK Metcalf and a Michael Pittman. He's somebody who can contribute right away. He was Alabama's most consistent receiver last season. He might end up being better than Mekhi Lemon. I mean, I'm not gonna go too far with that, but Mekhi Lemon has never really impressed me too much, just watching his film and then his interview after. I mean, he was kind of all over the place. Jeremy Bernard at Alabama really performed well, and I think he's a guy you can pair up with, like I mentioned, DK Metcalf, Michael Pittman, and now you have Jeremy Bernard. I think that's a really solid three receivers right there. And I think Jeremy Bernard is an improvement over Calvin Austin, although I don't want to disrespect Calvin Austin. He had his moments with the Steelers as well. But I think that's a really good pick by the Steelers. I thought that was maybe their best pick of the draft for the value and for the fact that I think he could be just as good as Mekhi Lemon, and you're getting him in the second round. So I like the pick, and I thought the Steelers, they get a receiver and everything. They're all good, and then we're thinking. I was at the draft day too, and we're thinking, hey, I think the Steelers are going to take a QB here with pick 76 in round 3, and they do end up taking a quarterback. I was hoping it was going to be Garrett Nussmeier out of LSU. I think Nussmeier was the best quarterback remaining out of the options. Carson Beck was drafted by Arizona, and he was not. I'm not a Carson Beck guy. I don't think. I mean, Miami was successful in the college football playoff the few times, like with him throwing as little as possible. Right when he had to throw a bunch, it became an issue, and it was a lot of dink and dunk with him. I don't see it with Carson Beck, and I think Garrett Nussmeier is better. I know he was battling injuries in 2025 with LSU. That O-line was brutal. The skilled players for LSU were not as good as they've been. They've been elite recently, but not in 2025. And it was just a terrible season for LSU football. And Brian Kelly, I mean, he weighs you down too. So I was higher. And Garrett Nussmeier is a bigger body guy. He doesn't have great mobility, but he can move around in the pocket and escape a little bit. But I think third round you take a flyer. Instead, they draft Drew Aller, who has accomplished a lot less even than Garrett Nussmeier in college in terms of statistical numbers. Obviously, they got to the national semifinal under Drew Aller, but he ended up making the mistake in the end that ended up costing Penn State the game against Notre Dame. Aller, you love the intangibles. He's a big guy. He can run. He took off and ran a bunch in that Penn State offense because he couldn't complete passes, so he was just running. And I mean, I don't want to crap on the kid because I hope he succeeds with the Steelers. Obviously, I just don't know if that was the pick over like a Nussmeier or something. Now, Mike McCarthy, he said this is his guy. He preferred Drew Aller out of the quarterbacks remaining. Okay. I'm going to trust and defer to McCarthy on that. He's a quarterback guy, and I think he sees something in Drew Aller that he can get the best out of and really improve on for him to make him a good quarterback, because quite frankly, he was not a very good college quarterback. And so you're asking a big, big jump for him going to the NFL and playing for the Steelers. And I mean, he's going to have to improve the accuracy. He's going to have to improve his decision-making in terms of where to throw the football. He didn't turn it over very much at Penn State, but he didn't complete many passes down the field. There's a lot of dink and dunk, talking about dink and dunk, which the Steelers love. He did a lot of dink and dunk, dump-offs to the running backs. Now, part of that was the wide receiver core for Penn State has not been very good for years now, which is kind of surprising. I mean, they hit on every other position except really quarterback a little to a certain extent and wide receiver. But it was just a lot of short passes, and against the best teams, against Ohio State, it was strictly short passes. It was, 10 of 25 for 140 yards with a touchdown and an interception, right? It was just wasn't the greatest of performances. And so he's going to need to improve a lot in his reading of the field, particularly down the field, and his accuracy. He wasn't as accurate last season. He was battling injury, and he ended up missing the rest of the season. That's another thing, is Steelers got to make sure he is fully healthy for the season as well. But I think, so now you got Will Howard, you got Drew Aller, and all expectations are that Aaron Rodgers is going to come back. And so it puts the Steelers in an interesting spot there. Is it just going to be a true battle for the backup spot between Drew Aller and Will Howard? Again, I'm not a Penn State fan by any means, but I'm a Steeler fan, and just like with a Joey Porter or Pat Freiermuth, I want any Steeler to succeed, right? I don't care where they went to school. Zach Frazier, West Virginia. So I'm rooting for the kid. I hope he can find what he's been missing as a quarterback. I hope the Steelers can get that out of him. But I just don't like the pick. I don't like the pick because Garrett Nussmeier, even honestly, I was more high on even a Taylon Green. I know he fell to the 6th round, which really surprised me because he had such a great combine. But Taylon Green, he has a lot of talent. I mean, he's really fast. He's really mobile. Got to work on his accuracy. Got to work on his reading of the field for sure. But he has that escapability. He played at Arkansas where he was in shootouts every game, and he needed to score 40 points for Arkansas to win. And playing with kind of lesser offensive talent than the Blue Bloods of the SEC, and he got it done for the most part. And he had a great combine. Again, he's not Lamar Jackson fast, but he has really good speed for a quarterback. And I wouldn't have hated if the Steelers waited until the 4th or 5th round and took a Taylon Green and took a flyer on him instead of a Drew Aller. Or either one. I mean, I had both kind of similarly. But just seeing so much of Drew Aller in college is just he's missing layups, right? He's definitely missing all these down the field, but he's missing layups here. So, again, we love the intangibles of Drew Aller. He's a big guy. He can move around a little bit. Certainly more than Nussmeier and Carson Beck. But, again, that felt like such a Steelers draft move. And I wish the best for him, but I just don't know if that was the answer for the Steelers. We'll have to see. We'll have to wait and see how it plays out. But a lot of people shifting towards the rest of the Steelers draft, a lot of people were kind of just wishy-washy on the Steelers draft overall. Again, I like the Jeremy Bernard pick. I like the Max Ihanachor pick. Quite honestly, I like the pick. I think it's getting overhated just because of the optics of the situation. Don't hate on the kid. He's a first-round pick. He has first-round pick material, and a lot of people are saying he's all pro material if he can clean up a couple things. So I'm not going to be trashing that first-round pick, or certainly not Jeremy Bernard in the 2nd round. They took Dalen Everett from Georgia as a corner in the 3rd round later. He's a physical player at Georgia and everything, and we'll just have to see what he looks like for the Steelers. Don't know too much about him. The big news from round 3 as well was Jennings Dunker getting drafted by the Steelers at Iowa. The Steelers take 2 players at Iowa in this draft. Jennings Dunker, he just kind of looks like a Yinzer. Having some icy light or something. He looks like a Pittsburgh Steeler, and that kind of lightened the spirits for me and my buddy at the draft. The Jennings Dunker. People were saying the Steelers should take him. They were saying that earlier in the day, not even before the 2nd round. He was just saying, and I was like, you know what, that'd be so fun. And then they actually took him, and that was cool. Offensive tackle, we'll see what he does, what he can do for the Steelers. I don't really have too much of an expectation, although we love the Iowa kids. Steelers always go to the Iowa well. They have similar colors, uniform colors, and play similar style of football at times as well. So it was good to see Jennings Dunker getting selected. And then Caden Wetjen out of Iowa was taken. I don't even remember him, quite honestly, with Iowa. I don't remember seeing him too much, so we'll have to see with him. Maybe just some wide receiver depth. They got Riley Nowakowski. They're listing him as a fullback. He's a tight end, but they're listing him as a fullback, and so we will have to see how the Steelers do. Maybe it's a replacement for Connor Hayward. And then they took a couple more picks. Gabriel Rubio out of Notre Dame, a defensive tackle, some depth there. Robert Spears-Jennings out of Oklahoma, part of that good Oklahoma defense last year. And then Eli Heidenreich in round 7 with the Steelers' last pick. So again, I think it was an okay draft for the Steelers. I think the Max Ihanachor pick is getting overhated, quite frankly. I think he could be a really good player. I think he will be a really good O-lineman for the Steelers. and I love the Jeremy Bernard pick. But again, the one that everyone's talking about, the Drew Aller pick, we'll just have to wait and see. I'm rooting for the guy. I hope he does well with the Steelers. I hope Mike McCarthy and that staff can get the most out of him. But he's going to have to work on a lot of things because people are comparing it to like Kenny Pickett, but Kenny Pickett was a Heisman runner-up, right? Kenny Pickett led his team, a Pitt team with not as much talent as Penn State, to an ACC championship and would have been in the 12-team playoff had it existed then, right? You can say what you want about Kenny Pickett in the NFL, but in college, in that last year, Kenny Pickett's first several seasons were just a little bit worse than Drew Aller overall, right? And then he has that Heisman contender kind of season in 2021. So that's an unfair comparison to Kenny Pickett, quite frankly, comparing him to Drew Aller. And I know Drew Aller got farther in the playoffs and everything, but that wasn't his doing. He had an elite defense, elite defensive line and linebacking core, and he had elite running backs, right? And so Pitt had a really good defensive line and linebackers and pretty good receivers and backs, but they didn't have the sheer talent that Penn State did. So I really don't want to hear those comparisons. I hope for the Steelers' sake Drew Aller does work out better, but he's going to be entering a better environment to be successful with the Steelers now with Mike McCarthy as compared to Mike Tomlin and Matt Canada for Kenny Pickett. So we'll just have to see with all that. Again, hoping for the best with Drew Aller. But I would give the Steelers probably like a C, like an average kind of draft. People are really poo-pooing them and their draft overall. I think it was all right. I don't really know. Again, we won't know until these players play and everything. We've said the Steelers have really good drafts, and then it turns out the players they drafted didn't pan out. So we will just have to see with that going forward. We're going to take a break here. Coming up, I'm going to talk about the Pens and what they got to do in Game 5 and going forward to pull off a miracle series victory against Philadelphia. Sports Scuba Nathan Schivins, WPPJ 670 AM. And welcome back to the Sports Scuba Nathan Schivins, WPPJ 670 AM, Point Park's radio station. Thank you everyone again for listening in and supporting me here with this show and everything. Really appreciate it. Thank you again to WPPJ for allowing me to talk about sports every week for an hour. Really appreciate it. Also appreciated Austin Carnes. Want to shout out Austin having me on Saturday afternoon for the WPPJ NFL draft coverage. It was really fun talking to him about how the city did preparing for the draft and hosting the draft and how much of a success it was. And we got into the Steelers draft selections and some other team selections that we thought were interesting, we thought were good picks or bad picks and stuff like that. So it was a really good, fun time with Austin. So thank you, Austin and WPPJ, for allowing us to do that and for having me on. And, with all that being said, I want to talk about the Pittsburgh Penguins, who, were just flat out abysmal first 3 games of the series. And they really, even in Game 4, weren't strong. It was just like the Penguins just were playing into Philadelphia's hand so much. What Philly's trying to do, they don't have the offensive firepower the Penguins have, but they can get in people's heads. And what they were trying to do is mess with the Pens, mess with Malkin, mess with Crosby, get in their heads, and try and get them off their game and shake it up. And they were really successful in doing that in Game 1, Game 2, and Game 3. And the Penguins have that lead in Game 3. And then that's that big fight. Rust and Konechny going at it. Konechny should have got a penalty too. Or should have got more heavily penalized too for what he did to Rust. But the Penguins just playing into Philly's hand the first 3 games really killed them. And right after that skirmish and everything, when it was like 4 minutes in the second period, Pens are up 1-0. Immediately after that, Philly seizes momentum and they cruise to a victory. And it was just it was just crazy to see from the Penguins. We haven't seen this all season. Not only an inability to score goals, but an inability to create many chances and really just get shots on net, because Philly's defense, to their credit, has been really good, but they've also gotten into the Penguins' head. After Game 1, they were in the Penguins' head, and it really has been unfortunate to see because, one, it's a rival. It's one of the Penguins' bigger rivals, obviously cross-state rival in Philly. And two, I mean, this Penguins team has been playing so good the second half of the season. It really felt like the 3-game losing streak they had when they rested everybody to end the season carried into the playoffs. And the Penguins just weren't sharp. They weren't crisp in passing. The defensemen have not been strong. And finally in Game 4, the Penguins get a lead, and then it's 1-1, but the Penguins respond, and Chris Letang had a good shot, and Crosby was doing a lot to carry the Penguins. And that was a big win for the Penguins, obviously, in Game 4 to keep their very slim hopes alive. They'd have to be, I think the first team in NHL history to come back from down 3-0. So if anybody can do it, it could be Crosby, but this Game 5 is so important for the Penguins to win at home. If you win at home in Game 5, it goes back to Philly, and now Philly feels that pressure at home to win, because if they don't win, then they got to go back to Pittsburgh in Game 7, and they don't want to go to Pittsburgh in Game 7. They just don't, even though they won the first 2 games in Pittsburgh. The Penguins might have found a little something in Game 4 that they can carry over. Going to be really interested to see how this Penguins team looks in Game 5 here. At home, we'll see what the crowd feels like. I'm sure they'll be amped and everything, but you're down 3-1, and your team has not been playing inspiring hockey. Excuse me. Has not been playing inspiring hockey recently at all. So we will see with the Penguins, but, I mean, they need contributions from guys who played well in the regular season. Anthony Mantha has not done anything for the Penguins, and he led the team in goals this year. I think at 32 or 33 for the Penguins. He's got to do something for Pittsburgh here to help elongate this series. I think he has 0 career playoff goals in 18 games, so hopefully that changes for him. You're looking at Tommy Novak had his chances. You're looking at him. Chinikov has just not been good. His shots, he just point blank, and he's missing the net. I know they won in Game 4, but he missed the net on a turnover by Philly. He was wide open, like 6 feet from goal and Vladar, and he shot it wide left of the net even. Can't be doing that. Gotta get shots on net and just see what happens. And he's got to be better. I just don't understand why he's not paired with Malkin. They were so good together in the regular season. I just don't know why you break that up. I don't really understand the thought process there. And so, I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll have to see what Dan Muse does. But I think Rick Tocchet in Philly has done a great job of executing their game plan, of getting in the Pens' head, making this series mucky. The Penguins want to be in 4-3 and higher scoring kind of games, but that's not what Philly wants. Philly wants to muck it up, right, and make it harder for the Penguins to do anything in their offensive zone. So we will see what the Penguins can do tonight against Philadelphia. Looking forward to it, certainly. But yeah, that's just. I mean, what else are you going to say about the Penguins? I mean, I just think they came out really flat and deterred by Philadelphia in the first couple games. Then Game 3 on the road, the crowd and everything got in their heads again. And you have the lead and everything in a game where you really couldn't lose that game if you wanted to win the series. And they do, in fact, lose that game because you got a bunch of players in the penalty box. The Philly fans love it, love the fight from their team, and you end up just giving up a bunch of goals and losing that game. So Penguins going to be sharper. a little even more sharp than they were in Game 4, because that even wasn't kind of the performance we've seen from the Penguins. They just got to have crisper passing. They got to get as many shots on goal as they can. They really do. And they can't, on these power plays, they can't give up shorthanded opportunities. They just, even like under Sullivan and now under Muse, like they just give up a bunch of shorthanded opportunities. You can't give Philadelphia any extra opportunities because they're really not garnering many like Philly is not scoring that much, right? They've scored off of Penguins' mistakes. They've scored off of momentum. They've scored off of weird caroms, right? I mean, they've scored off of shorthanded opportunities. They've just taken advantage of all the Penguins' mistakes. And so how do you stop that? Well, you stop having these mistakes that the Penguins have had. And so the power play's got to be better. But really, Crosby's going to have to carry. He's going to have to carry and put this team on his back, because they still got 3 more. They need to win 3 more games, and that's going to be really tough for the Penguins. But hey, if anybody could do it, Crosby could do it. But there's going to need to be Crosby carrying, but also an Anthony Mantha stepping up, a Tommy Novak stepping up. Some of these guys, obviously Chinakhov stepping up. Malkin's got to be better on both sides, and Erik Karlsson's got to do a little bit too. And show kind of what he did the last couple months of the season where he was on fire. So that's what the Pens got to do here in Game 5. Well, again, it'll be interesting to see what happens, how the Penguins come out to start the game, and the intensity level and everything. But just being disciplined. If they're disciplined, I think they're going to win the game. I think they should be up 3-1 or it should be 2-2 or something like that instead of being down 3-1. If they were just more disciplined and everybody knew coming in, Philly was going to try to get in the Penguins' heads and be really physical and maybe be a little dirty and try to get the Penguins off their game. And the Penguins just let it happen to them. They fed right into it. And so if they just are disciplined and stay out of the fights and the skirmishes and everything and stay out of the penalty box as much as possible, I think they're going to be okay in Game 5. But they've dug themselves such a hole now that it's going to be really tough to win the series. If they do, they'll be the first in history. So enjoy it, Penguin fans, while you can, watching your team, because it might end tonight for all we know, which would be really unceremonious. But that's where we're at with the Penguins right now, doing similar things in the playoffs as the Steelers. I do want to shout out the Riverhounds because there was some banter on Twitter. When is there not? But there was banter on Twitter in the Pittsburgh sports community because on 93.7, I think it was Joe Starkey or someone was saying, the Steelers, or like Pittsburgh sports teams haven't won a playoff game since 2018 or whatever, or 2019, whenever the Penguins last won a playoff game. And people were quick to point out, well, the Riverhounds just won the championship in the USL championship, and that was quite a run. I watched all that. I mean, it was just 0-0. I mean, they were just winning kind of in extra time or in penalties. That's what the Riverhounds did this past season. And, I do think the Riverhounds are very underappreciated in the city. I think it's really cool. At Highmark Stadium now, it's going to be, I think, FNB Stadium. And obviously, they're going to fix it up a little bit even more, make it a bigger stadium. And to fit, I guess, USL regulation or whatever. And so I do think they get underappreciated a little bit. They're not a minor league team either. Like Filiponi is saying, I love Pony. He's saying like they're not a minor league team. They're just they're in this division. Like they're not, like Indianapolis for the Pirates, right? They're their own franchise and everything, and they're in the USL League, which is a very competitive league, which I know is trying to institute relegation, which would be, I mean, we don't see that in the U.S., which I think would be pretty cool. It'd be interesting to see if, like, relegation for some of these other sports would happen as well. But I like the systems where they are now, but relegation is kind of fun with, European soccer and everything. But just want to give the Riverhounds their props because one team in the city does well in the playoffs. But the Riverhounds actually, before they won the championship, they were always losing early. I remember they were like first place or second place a couple years ago, and they lost in the first or second game, and they were done. So I remember they were struggling in the playoffs a little bit as well, but obviously they won the championship this past season, and now they're playing their season for 2026 right now. So just want to give the Riverhounds some props. One team, at least very recently, is doing well in Pittsburgh in the playoffs. So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about the NBA playoffs coming up. Before I get to break, I just want to mention some injuries of note in the playoffs. Anthony Edwards just a terrible. Well, I'll start with Dante DiVincenzo because he tore his Achilles, and he's going to be out a long time. DiVincenzo, I love how DiVincenzo plays. DiVincenzo has always given his all for teams, and he's clutch, and he was really clutch for Minnesota in these playoffs already against Denver. He hit a huge three against the Nuggets in Game 2, and was good in Game 3 as well to help propel Minnesota on the road and to get a 3-1 lead. Just devastated for him. He's a Villanova guy. I grew up watching and really supporting those Villanova teams with him and Jalen Brunson and Colin Gillespie and Josh Hart and everything. And so he's gonna be missed in the playoffs. In Minnesota, they take a hit. They take a hit with their team and their title hopes because they've been dominant against the Nuggets defensively. It's been crazy. But Ant Edwards is going to be out a couple weeks as well. He came down weird on his knee. He's already having problems with it. And so he's going to be out. So the Nuggets have 3 games. They're going to win 3 straight games to beat Minnesota in this series. And it's going to be tough. I mean, the Nuggets in Game 4, like I said, Ant Edwards and DiVincenzo were out for the vast majority of that game. And the Nuggets still got outscored and lost by 16 or 18 or 19. And they just could look completely out of sorts. Murray hasn't been shooting well at all. Jokic is out of control right now. He's honestly been a detriment to the Nuggets. He's turned it over too much. Rudy Gobert has completely locked him down, which we got to admit. You have to admit it. I mean, if you're just watching, you see the tough shots Jokic has to take, the turnovers he's committing because Gobert is in his head. And Gobert doesn't provide too much offensively other than, lob dunks at the rim. But defensively, he's a lot slimmer than Jokic, but he's taller, and he's been able to hold his own and not get in serious foul trouble. And he's really hurt the Nuggets. And Aaron Gordon being hurt in Game 3 was an issue. Christian Brown, they're paying him over $20 million a year. And he doesn't do anything particularly well. I don't really think he's a great defender. People are always, he's a good defender. I don't really think so. He doesn't hit threes consistently. He misses layups frequently. And Jokic gets the ball to him in Game 2. Instead of taking a floater, he does a weird pass that gets deflected. It somehow gets to Brown, and he gets fouled. And they're down 2. And I'm like, he's going to miss one of these. And he did. He clanked the first one. He's just not that guy. And, you just can't be relying on Tim Hardaway all the time for your offense and for three-point shooting. There's got to be guys stepping up, hitting the three. The Nuggets have been atrocious from the three-point line. But I'm going to get into these series further. We're going to take a break, our final break of the show. And we'll be right back. Sports Scoop with Nathan Schivins, WPPJ 670 AM. And welcome back to the Sports Scoop with Nathan Schivins, WPPJ 670 AM, Point Park's radio station. Thank you, everyone, for listening in here. Final 15 or so minutes of the show here. Just going to dive deep into the NBA playoffs a little bit. I talked about Denver, Minnesota a little bit. I'm not going to go too further with that. I mean, it's just been a Minnesota masterclass defensively. Jaden McDaniels has been tremendous. DiVincenzo was tremendous defensively, obviously, before his Achilles injury. And we got to talk about Ayo Dosunmu, who is playing tremendous for Minnesota in this round and who went off in Game 4, really carried Minnesota offensively against the Nuggets and put the Nuggets away in Game 4. I mean, it was just a tremendous effort from Dosunmu, who the Timberwolves got at the trade deadline, kind of an under-the-radar move by Minnesota, acquiring Dosunmu from the Bulls, who were a disaster, and he was tremendous. So Game 5 for Minnesota-Denver is tonight. Nuggets 11.5-point favorites. Again, some of these lines, like, have we watched what the Timberwolves have done defensively to Denver? I'm easily taking Minnesota in the points, hypothetically, in Game 5. I don't really understand why that line is so large. I know Ant Edwards is out, and DiVincenzo is too. But again, Minnesota outscored Denver with both of them out in last game. So, but this is a desperation game for Denver. Obviously, if they lose, they're done. So it'll be interesting to see there. Other series, obviously the Lakers. What a job by the Lakers against Houston. Obviously, Kevin Durant has been out 3 of the 4 games here for Houston. But Houston, has been an embarrassment. It's been a real embarrassment for the Rockets. And they needed to get that win in Game 4. Now, they're going to lose the series, obviously, now too. But just a lost season, a season going in that had so much promise, right? You get Kevin Durant. You have pair him with Şengün and Van Vliet and Jabari Smith and Amen Thompson, and you think you got something. And right before the season, Van Vliet, he tore his ACL. I can't remember now, but he obviously out for the season. And now in the playoffs, you go to the playoffs, you play a Lakers team without Luka Doncic, without Austin Reeves, and KD's out Game 1, and you lose that game, and you can't score. And you can't score really in Game 2, and you blow Game 3. And they needed to win Game 4, they did, but that series is over. And I mean, now the Lakers are going to go to the second round, and they'll play OKC, and they'll lose. They'll probably get swept, I would assume. Maybe if Luka and Reeves come back, they can win a game or 2, maybe. But either way, like, the Lakers weren't expecting anything out of this playoffs, and Houston just kind of crapped the bed, really. And Şengün has been bad. He's not taken the step that many people thought he could take into being a star center. He's undersized. He runs kind of funny. He's not really mobile. That's why people compare him to Jokic, but he doesn't have the skill of Jokic. And he just hasn't been good defensively or offensively for Houston. They needed him to really carry offensively, and he just hasn't done it with Kevin Durant out. And so, could they win against the Lakers in Game 5? Maybe, but the Lakers, what a job by the Lakers. What a job by J.J. Redick. LeBron has cemented himself. I don't really dabble, or is that dapper? I don't even know if I'm dabble. I don't even know what the term is in the GOAT conversation, because they're just all tremendous. You know, Jordan, LeBron. It's really just Jordan and LeBron in terms of the GOAT conversation, but obviously Kareem, Magic, Kobe, all just so good as well. You don't want to. I feel like you diminish greatness when you put one on a pedestal and you bump one down. But I think this series, if it already wasn't cemented, has cemented LeBron James as the greatest basketball player of all time. just what he's done, the longevity is completely unheard of in the game of basketball. He's literally 41 years old and doing this and just leading a team. Look at the guys around him. I love Marcus Smart. I love Luke Kennard. But it's a bunch of role players. Jared Vanderbilt, right? It's a bunch of role players. Rui Hachimura and LeBron right now. And he's just done everything he can to will this team. And they're one more win from advancing to the second round in a series that nobody expected them to compete in even. So LeBron, it's just been tremendous, and I'm so happy for him playing with his son and everything. And Bronny's held his own playing in some of these games as well, which is great to see Bronny kind of improving his game and everything, because obviously out of college he wasn't quite an NBA player. And I think now he's a very respectable NBA player, which is great to see. So the Lakers, I don't like the Lakers. I'll be the first to admit it, but I'm not against them. I've rooted for LeBron. I love LeBron, and that's just greatness. You watch him, and that's just greatness. Game 3, just that shot, and getting the Lakers to overtime, and the Lakers winning in overtime. Just tremendous. That's storybook stuff, right? That's legend stuff, and he's obviously a legend of the game of basketball. He's been cemented as a legend for a decade. But that's something that Jordan was not at 40, was not doing this. 41 was not doing what LeBron's doing. Nobody has ever been able to do this, and he's just one of one. He's Nick Wright on FS1. I love Nick Wright. He made a great point or an observation. LeBron at the age of 41 is playing like prime Chris Paul, right? He's scoring when he can and when he needs to, but he's distributing it so good, and he's getting after it defensively, and even for his age and everything, it's just tremendous to watch. I love watching the Lakers, and I really want to watch the Lakers every game just so I can watch LeBron as much as possible, because there will be a point at some point where LeBron James is not playing in the NBA anymore, right? It feels like he'll be playing forever now, but there will be a time when he's not. But I try to watch every Laker game just to watch LeBron and watch greatness, watch the greatest of all time do it right in front of our eyes. So great job by the Lakers and J.J. Redick. J.J. Redick's outcoached Ime Udoka, but it's you kind of expected that. J.J. Redick is very analytical and knows his stuff with basketball. Ime Udoka is more of a emotional leader and everything. I don't even want to compare him to Tomlin. He's not even close to Tomlin's level or character as a person. But just that kind of stylistically, that kind of coach that's a motivator that wears his heart on his sleeve and everything. But he's not a X's and O's kind of basketball coach. Elsewhere in the West, OKC is taking care of Phoenix, and San Antonio is taking care of the Trailblazers. And there's not much else to say about those. But both those teams, San Antonio is going to win that series, and they're going to wait. They're going to be like, oh, could we actually face Minnesota instead of the Nuggets without Ant Edwards too? Right? So the Spurs might catch a big break. Because I think if Denver did win this series, the Spurs don't match up nearly as well as a Minnesota or an OKC does with the Nuggets. And so I think the Spurs are happy that series is going the way it is, and they're taking care of business with Portland, and they might play Minnesota instead without Ant Edwards and without Dante DiVincenzo. But it is seeding is important in the playoffs. We're seeing that. The Trailblazers and the Timberwolves, that's night and day. That's not just 6 versus 7 in seeding. That's a night and day difference in the level of competition. Minnesota is a much better team than Portland. Portland, it's year one of them, trying to build something, and so that's the difference. The Nuggets had a long spell in the middle to second half of the season before their winning streak to close the season, where they lost a bunch of games and fell out of that 2 seed and fell way down to 6 at one point and then back to 3. But that's the difference. You play Portland or you play Minnesota. And I said before that series, the Nuggets should be worried about Minnesota. They got to be on their A game, and they just weren't. Elsewhere, Boston, they lost the game to Philly, but Embiid came back, and that didn't matter. The Celtics crushed the Sixers. They'll win in Game 5 and close that out. Cavs have choked Game 4. James Harden not performing very well. Donovan Mitchell was not good at all. If those two play to their regular season standards, it's a sweep kind of series. But now it heads back to Cleveland. I expect the Cavs to win that series, but it's going to be tighter now. What else we got? Knicks and Hawks, how about that? Tied 2-2. I think the Knicks will end up winning that series, but some things to be concerned about if you're a Knicks fan. And then, hey, Detroit got a win tonight against Orlando, or else they're going to be in big trouble. We knew Orlando was a really quality kind of team, and they just haven't played up to that this season. But Orlando, you got to watch out. You got to watch out because if Banchero and Bane and Wagner and Black and Suggs are all playing and Carter are playing great, Orlando's tough to beat. But I'll have much more on the NBA next week here, which will be my final show actually next week of the Sports Scoop for the semester. So with that being said, thank you everyone for tuning in and listening in today. Thank you for WPPJ as always for the opportunity to talk about sports for an hour every Monday. And with that, I'll see you all next week. Sports Scoop with Nathan Schivins, WPPJ 670 AM.